Hey, this is Pam and Dialect from Brunch and Budget, and we've got a special message for you.
We do.
It's good news.
It's good news. We're excited about it. We are going to be part of a new podcast network called the Race and Wealth Podcast Network.
We're actually starting a new podcast network. We're involved with Diedrich Asante Muhammad, who you may remember from Race and Wealth, the podcast that I was co-hosting, that Pam was producing with
and
them.
he's also been a guest on our show a couple times. He was the Racial Wealth Divide Initiative Senior Fellow at Prosperity Now, and he is currently the Chief of Equity Inclusion at NCRC. And so we are extremely excited to be starting this podcast network with him. And we have a little preview for you of a new show that we are doing together, the three of us, called Preach to the Choir.
It's a 3-person booth. Don't worry, Brunch and Budget is still going to be continuing on. I guess this one is more of a sequel to Race and Wealth, as Race and Wealth has ascended to being a whole network. We have other shows that we're going to be bringing on soon, so we'll be letting you guys know as those come out. Please tell us how you're feeling about it. Reach out, let us know. We're all looking for collaboration because we still got to keep talking about money and talking about race and talking about life. We got to preach to the choir so they know what to sing. Check it out. Thanks, y'all.
To make you feel safe, a couple people had to get displaced. But right up the block, an unarmed black man got shot. And to keep his job, another brother had to cut off his locks. And you scared I'll force you to be PC? Man, you must be on PCP.
I don't know much, but I know one thing. You gotta preach to the choir so they know what to sing. I don't know much, but I know one thing. You gotta preach to the choir so they know what to sing. I don't know much, but I know one thing. You gotta preach to the choir so they know what to sing. I don't know much, but I know one thing. You gotta preach to the choir.
Racism is on beast mode and only music soothes the savage, so we gotta preach to the choir so they know what to sing. This is the Preach to the Choir podcast, where we explore how culture affects the racial wealth divide and vice versa. Recorded live at Greenhouse Studios in East New York, Stickum, Stickum, with your hosts, Diedrich Asante Muhammad, Chief of Equity and Inclusion at NCRC, Pamela Capalid, a CFP, Certified Financial Planner, and owner of Brunch and Budget, and Dialect, your sound provider for the afternoon, evening, morning, or whatever you're listening to it. Preach to the Choir is part of the Race and Wealth Network.
All right. Thank you, Dialect. So we are going to talk about something that has been in the news for a while. Avengers Endgame.
Okay. You said that so ominously.
I was wondering how you were leading into this. Yeah, I was like, what's been on the news for a while?
Avengers Endgame. News, theaters, Twitter. It's been all over the place.
All the places.
Yes, in some ways you could argue it's kind of been the dominant media consumption for the last 10 years. I mean, if you take all the Avengers movies put together.
Oh my God.
I can't believe
they took over.
How'd they make all of them movies in 10 years? They had it's like damn near 30.
There were 20 movies.
It's more than 20. It's like
21.
21? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It felt like there was like 30.
It does.
Yeah, no.
It does. It was like the longest running TV show and most expensive TV show that
Since
ever
Game
happened.
of Thrones.
Since Game of Thrones, yeah. Exactly.
No, it really is amazing because, I mean, it used to be like Star Wars, right? It would be 3 movies over 10 years, and that was amazing success.
Right?
Yeah,
that was a big deal.
Now they're
Yeah,
like putting out 2-3 movies a year.
Yeah, that's right. Over 10 years. I mean, it is, you critique the movies as you will. It is kind of an accomplishment to make, again, you like the movies or you don't, but a lot of people do like them. And to make that many movies for that long that could all build and intersect and be independent, it's kind of amazing.
It's pretty epic.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, we normally talk about stuff that I said on the intro here at Preach to the Choir, where we're talking about race, we're talking about wealth, we're talking about the ways things cross over and build off each other and the culture behind it and all that type of stuff. And today, we wanted to step a bit back and get a little meta.
yeah, well, because the thing about Avengers Endgame and the whole premise, I want to talk about Thanos. I want to talk about his whole, in that alternate universe, when he snapped away half of the entire world's population. What are the economic implications of that, right? Is the racial wealth divide over when he does that? Does everyone have twice as many resources? Like, what happens?
Well, part of that might depend on the random distribution of the snap, because it's not necessarily going to be even in terms of like ethnicities, because he ain't going to be thinking about that because, he's a higher being.
Or class.
Exactly, class, ethnicity. So if randomly we have gotten rid of most of the rich folks and their heirs, there might be a radical redistribution.
Except that I'm pretty sure, I mean, there was something in the movie. The idea of randomness was supposed to mean that it wasn't supposed to hit any any class in particular or any nationality in particular. But either way, it'll be interesting.
If they got the right 8 billionaires,
It's true.
it would
That's
cause a
pretty
massive
random.
upheaval.
Yeah. So before we go into that, though, I want to start with our victim or villain. And we want to talk about these supervillains in Marvel, right? We have Thanos, we have Killmonger. If we want to go all the way back to Fox, we have Magneto from X-Men.
Well, yeah, it's not from Fox. He's from
which just
60s.
recently released its most recent X-Men movie, Dark Phoenix, of the bad Marvel movies.
Yeah. It's such a shame, man. When you talk about race and class and all that stuff, I really related to the X-Men comics as a kid because I thought that they did a really good job of presenting the other. But those movies by themselves don't really work.
They didn't even do that.
Well, because you need context. The whole thing that's ill about the X-Men is the ill thing about racism in general. And people be like, well, how come people like Spider-Man and Captain America but don't like Wolverine because he was born with it? That don't make sense. That's the point.
That's the point. So,
well, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I just want to kind of talk about these 3 supervillains essentially because they're presented as supervillains, but I'm wondering, are they just misunderstood? Are they radical heroes or are they actually terrorists? I don't know.
Yeah, no, and that's a point I've been, my theory around people, and particularly, let's look at those 3, Magneto, Killmonger, and Thanos. And for people who, Thanos is the purple guy. I'm wearing a purple shirt for Thanos today, who snapped and made half the world's population disappear. Killmonger is the quote-unquote bad guy in the Black Panther movie, who was the African-American who was kind of pushed out of the royal family of Wakanda, of the Black Panther, and then tried to lead a world rebellion of Black people against pretty much white supremacist powers. And then Magneto, who was the bad mutant who, in response to the oppression that mutants were facing in the X-Men universe, was trying to lead a rebellion against humanity or non-mutants. To establish power for mutants. So those are the 3. And my theory is that, they're all portrayed as, kind of radical terrorists because of this underlying conservatism that even in comic book world, a radical redistribution of power and resources is not something that can be supported even in the movies. And I think all of those characters, Magneto, Killmonger, Thanos all cross a line, different lines, but lines of actually taking violent stands against the power structure. Even Captain America became kind of a bad boy when he stopped following the rules and regulations of the U.S. government in Infinity Wars, right? And all of a sudden he started wearing not so much red, white, and blue, but more black and gray.
He started cursing too. I was like, he started cursing too. I was like, Captain America said shit.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's interesting too. It's like, how come people, when they start being radical and disobeying the government, now have to be unshaven, have to curse, or Killmonger has to pick up an old lady completely unnecessary and throw her against the wall. It was really not needed for the rebellion he was doing. But all these things we do that is done in media to show that, radical rebellion is wrong, though it's okay to blow up cities and towns and fighting for the establishment. But if you're trying to overthrow the establishment, that makes you a bad guy.
Well, that's one of the interesting things about comic books and superhero stories in general is that they kind of feed 2 different needs at the same time, because there's this rebellious spirit of this guy who's like, the system's not working. I've got this idea on my own. I'm going to do this thing. But oftentimes what they're fighting for is maintaining the status quo. When you look at things like the X-Men in particular, Professor X is training these kids where he's segregating and isolating them away from the humans who are afraid of them and building them up into child soldiers whose primary function is to fight their own people who get out of line.
Yes, that's right. It's to become part of the status quo, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's their whole thing. And that's why, people like to frame it as, an integration versus segregation type of thing. When you talk about folks like Magneto, who is a cat who grew up in the Holocaust, so he knew firsthand where this stuff leads him.
So was Magneto right?
It's not only Magneto was right, but I mean, even look at I have songs. I wrote a song called "Magneto Was Right," where I talk about Scar in The Lion King, where the lions in The Lion King, who are part of the ruling class, who are oppressive, also coded white. They're either James Earl Jones or literally played by white people, going up against Scar, who is the guy who goes and talks to the hyenas, the poor folks who actually speak with Black American slang accents, and was there to provide food and shelter and jobs. And he's portrayed as the bad guy for trying to break up this patriarchal, monarchical status quo.
Well, and I think it's interesting too, Diedrich, what you said about there are all these like little moments that these villains are given to prove that they're just like inherently bad people, right? It's like you like hurt old ladies. You attack random people. So you must be a bad person, and your whole ideology is based on that as well.
In X-Men, Magneto's crew is called the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. It's like
he named that himself. I'm sure that's what people call themselves.
But you know what? I think that they did, because in my mind, this my headcanon, the way I twist it is that's like they were basically NWA. They're like, you gonna say we the baddest? Well, we the baddest. We are the evil mutants.
And actually, I think, what's interesting is because, again, too, I believe that there was some intentional writing of trying to make Professor Xavier more of, quote unquote, a Martin Luther King and Magneto a, quote unquote, Malcolm X, when 20 years ago, Malcolm X was still considered bad. And the fact that there really weren't, I mean, it's interesting, even with the X-Men, and I think, a lot of African Americans, Latinos, people of color, people who just felt different, gravitated toward X-Men and liked the rebellion of X-Men, of being who they are different, but the X-Men could never rebel against the humans who were oppressing them. Those were only for the bad mutants. What's interesting is that you really didn't have strong Black superheroes. And I think you couldn't have really strong, independent Black superheroes because it would be too obvious about, like, how come they weren't, like, just destroying not just the Klan in Birmingham, but the entire police force of Birmingham, right? Or even attacking the U.S. government for what was clear racial disparities. You couldn't give an oppressed group that type of power because it would too easily highlight that rebellion should occur against the status quo that the writers are a part of.
Well, and I think that was the fear around Killmonger, right? Was give this guy this power, and his default or his automatic solution to all of this is, well, let's make Black people the superior race.
Well, and that's all that white genocide, fear that they're going to replace us whenever they're like, oh my God, we're going to be the minority, and what's going to happen then?
Let's also be clear about Killmonger. Killmonger was there was no indication that he was saying Black people were the superior race. His most radical act was saying we're going to end the kind of global political order that oppresses Black people. But it was never even kind of a nationalistic, like, racist frame. It was just that we're going to take guns and we're going to overthrow, or take vibranium more so, and overthrow this this power, and then the Black Panther, the Barack Obama of the Marvel world, kind of and he creates a charter school or something like that in Oakland, and that was supposed to replace World Rebellion against white supremacy.
Yeah, I want to address that because there's a really interesting point in that, but the Barack Obama thing I think is really ill because I don't know if you know this, but Chad Boseman, who played the Black Panther in the Black Panther film, he also played on Law and Order. Law and Order was the thing that young actors would get a job on doing, and you would play some random role. And in Law and Order, he played a young Chicago lawyer who was going to be a politician. So he's been that Barack Obama before. But the point of distinction, I think, between the whole Killmonger thing, and I think that this is an actual valid argument, is when him arming radical folks around the world, being like, take over, I think the question is, some people said that this is a bad thing because they didn't have a plan. And others said that this is a good thing because anything is better than this. And I think the argument between this and what makes a villain out of these ideas and what makes a hero is if you can decide, I want anything better than this, or we must be better than we have been treated.
All right,
so what's the consensus? Victim or villain? Killmonger, Thanos, and who did I leave out? Killmonger, Thanos,
Magneto.
Pam, let's go. Can we go with you, Pam?
I don't know. They still wanted to kill like large swaths of people. That's hard to. I know it's a little more gray than that, but
but see, I think Thanos is different than Magneto. I mean, do they want to kill more people? If Magneto fighting to overthrow a system, are they trying to kill more people than the system fighting back, trying to kill them?
Yeah, so I'll say it like this. Thanos, villain, because his stuff don't actually make sense and it's not logical and he's playing off emotions, really. Magneto, not villain. He is a revolutionary. Magneto was right. I would say Killmonger, I remain on the fence about. I think that he is incorrect, but I think that his methods were incorrect and they weren't going to work. But I think that his ideas and ideals were important. And if he could just get a mentor, if he could, talk to Magneto, the two of them could team up and do some great things.
I'll just do a basic Donald Trump, that this is all fake news and that they're all victims of a media elite trying to push the average person down. So long live Killmonger, Thanos, and Magneto.
There we go.
Heard it here first.
Can't keep the purple man down.
That's right. The purple, the black, and the Jew down. You can't keep those three down.
Wow. Willie, can that needs to be a record. Can you find
Can't keep the purple man down.
No, the purple, the black, and the Jew.
There we go.
The record's called Walked Into a Bar. That is the victim or villain for today. Let's move on. Let's take ourselves a break. And we're going to play some music. We got this joint here. It's called The Snap from Meta Beats, featuring Mudmouth, Arctic Cal, and Rough Styles. And we'll check y'all in a minute. This is the Preach to the Choir podcast.
Sliding in with a lit fuse, the kid with his lips bruised, his tiptoeing planets with a spring in his gym shoes. The rest of will sing blues, so F it, I'll sing reds, sing a rainbow, sing a moon, sing a sunset, sink into a clenched fist of truth that swings hard at your lies till it clips your tooth. My crew's proof, true skills will burst through. So if hip-hop's dead, it's only in your circle, cause I'm certain when the curtain's up, the butterflies start spelling murder in my gut. The punch drunk slash a mic mouth, flick a fire fountains and rhyme like a five-finger eye gouge. I'm bowed it, skills is countless. Hip-hop from my head to the toe of my trousers. A punk who sits thumping punch bag for hours. So it's stupid to try and act rowdy around us. Roundhouse uppercut, knuckle fuck throw. When the mud starts bubbling, numbers up go. Blowfish representative that swims with squids. And Killer Mike calls life with a sledgehammer kiss.
I weren't feeling sending grams at all. Never went to grammar school, but you know the grammar's cool. Hammerhead with the vocab, fam, I'm Hannibal. All up in your boat like a cannibal. Run up on your pitch like cannibal. I'm an animal, but I'm animal. Game the anaconda cover with a tennis ball. Stay sharp like Tenosaur. I'm a high horse, while jumping over my pedestal. Same race, I pay them more. Gotta keep my game face, I'm a general. No specifics, I'm talking in general. I'm all that, I'm then more. Intellectual, yeah, street credible. If you're looking for me, then tell them all that I'll be on the go. That's all I know. Ask me more. They could write a check big enough for us to set a for a raw. Make them all fall like sycamore. Swinging like record ball. No second four. They should retreat in the ball. I shoot game. You ain't even on the court yet. Got a wide open with the confidence I talk with the bravado that I walk with. Tizzy raised the bar like forklift. Fall back, fuck with. I ain't the little guy you can fuck with. Alien flow, got it abducted.
Invader, stay creating danger, plague the paper. For 80 days I wait the neighbors, raising hell like Satan. Grow my own thoughts and the fruit is passionate. Treat a pea brain like a golf ball, smacking it. In it till I GIE, lyrically VIP. If you don't like me, I don't care, one BIT. I'm happy with my actions are constructive. If you're acting ugly, I'm acting like it's nothing. Speaking from my own mind, hold mine the whole time. I open wide my soul's eyes and provide a gold shine. Light bulb lyricist with psycho-prolificness. You're spitting loud words of micro-significance. Open my vocab cabinet, I'm like a trophy magnet. Every day this dark as this day, only back backwards. Genesis to Revelations, give me an hour. I make new history with Meta Beats power.
And we are back. Preach to the Choir podcast. That was some sounds from the UK. That was Meta Beats featuring Mudmouth, Artical, and Rough Styles with the Snap. And we're here talking about Snap. You know, your favorite band who made the song "I Got the Power." Actually, you know,
Yes.
Snap stole that song from.
Yeah, because there were two versions. I remember.
Yeah,
There were
yeah,
two
they-
I Got the Power song.
Yeah.
CNC Music Factory, did they do one?
No. It was actually the whole. What's funny about that is I actually worked with the brother who made the original song.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'm blanking on his name.
I like his name.
Rob G. Chill Rob G. Rob G. And at my first job when I worked at a law firm, when in the mail room, he was in there and he was like, I did the song "I Got the Power," and a German group illegally remixed my joint, but because I didn't have rights to it, the label did. The label ended up signing them, and they put my song over me. Said my manager even screwed me over. They'd book us in the same area on the same night, and more people would go to the Snap show because they were promoting that more.
That's right. Like
Okay.
it was getting kind of hectic.
Amazing.
Wow. Willie's like clapping over here. Round of applause for that one. Woo! All right. So we're talking about a different Snap, though.
Different
we're talking
Snap,
about
yeah.
the most expensive Snap in Marvel history.
The most profit making.
The most, that's true,
as well.
actually. Most profitable, most expensive.
Yes.
Yeah, this movie, man. Everyone in the world saw Thanos get unsnapped. So is the Thanos snap necessary to save the planet is what we're asking today.
So was he right? Right.
Was he right?
Because we were just saying in the earlier
Thanos
segment,
right?
was he
Thanos
like right? But like now it's like, is it factually correct to do this?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was one interesting thing I did like about the character. Thanos is that the deeper in the movie, they made him less the ha bad guy and more of a thoughtful, kind of reflective, like most bad guys just want to go run the world. After he snapped, he just went to some like planet just to chill by himself and meditate and relax.
Yeah, he was fine with dying
job
even.
is done.
Yeah. Yeah, he had a
a
mission and he completed it. He didn't want to rule anything.
That's always the thing about supervillains. Whenever like I want to take over the world, and you're like, what you gonna do after that?
Yeah.
But he was like, yeah, I'm good actually. After
Yeah.
that.
I'm good.
There's nothing.
Exactly. I did my thing. I need to go over the world. And and I guess relating Thanos to and the snap to kind of the environment, to climate change. His argument, was that like he saw himself, which is true, which I also appreciate because most people don't see themselves as evil. They see themselves as saviors, and he saw himself as a savior of planets, not a destroyer. And his analysis was that population consumption was destroying this planet and would completely destroy the planet. So the only way to save it was to get rid of half the population. And so did that. And of course, that made him an enemy of the Avengers and most people who wouldn't want to see half of a human population wiped out. But I think the interesting thing around this is there really kind of this type of environmental challenge, crisis now that requires drastic action? Obviously no one's really recommending that we wipe out half the planet's population, but I think it does get at some interesting points around that.
Well, yeah, I'm curious because you brought up climate change. Would wiping out half a population on this planet solve climate change? Because we all know, we're all seeing the stats, we're all seeing the numbers. AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, has been talking about in 12 years, this could be irreversible, right? Which 12 years is not very far from now. So would losing 3.5 billion people allow the other half of the world to thrive?
Well, and does it work in this way? Because is it too late if we get rid of half the people, but we still got all the cows? Is there still too much methane to even get rid of?
Well, and not to be too wonky, there is some debate about whether Thanos was wiping out half the population of humans or half of life itself on the planet.
Because that's a whole next thing.
Right, yeah.
Which is a whole other thing. But I want to focus on the human population because I think getting rid of half the life on the planet is kind of beyond crazy. But you bring up an interesting note, Pam, that the stuff I've been reading, it's not so much an issue of overpopulation, but more of an issue of overconsumption.
Yeah.
It gets something that Dialect was bringing up earlier. The idea that some guy was writing an article and was saying if Thanos wanted to be actually more successful in dealing with issues of not just climate change, but kind of, climate change is one part. Like, if you got rid of half the population, it wouldn't all of a sudden bring the temperatures down. It would take a long time for that to occur, but it would help deal with the kind of, mass extinction of animal species that are happening. There's been, there was some article I think I saw in Al Jazeera around climate change raises alarm. In The Guardian, called the sixth mass extinction, and highlighting that up to 50% of all individual animals have been lost in the last 3 or 4 decades. And so, I think one thing that's fascinating, I've been hearing a lot of, there's a lot of movies about the future of climate catastrophe. But I think if you look around today, you can kind of see it's not one big event. We're kind of living currently in climate catastrophe or environmental catastrophe. I mean, I don't know about you all, but the weather is kind of crazy. Everywhere. Like, I'm seeing fires, I'm seeing floods. Even in my local area, we had 2 supposedly 1 in 1,000-year floods happen within 3 years of each other. That wiped out, that killed 2 people the first time, I think 1 person the second time, wiped cars down the road. Just these floods we really haven't seen. So I think there is clearly more and more evidence that the climate change and kind of overconsumption is having catastrophic changes in the environment and wiping out animal species. So I think there is some true analysis in that.
So then it feels like that Thanos' solution is a short-term solution in the grand scheme of things then, right? Because people are going to continue to procreate. People are going to continue to overconsume. People may feel like they have more license to overconsume since half the population was wiped out in an instant. So is this really a long-term solution, or is this just like a quick solve? Like, it feels so simple.
He's just dialing back the clock.
Easy.
That's all it is.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's like, let another 200-300 years pass, and are we back in the same place that we started?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. 200. I mean, again, I think what would happen if half the population disappeared? And I think in the movie, it just gave some little small indications that, we did go back a few hundred years, and that was in the United States, around the world, what would it take for the world to come back and kind of get back to, and I guess maybe the idea is that we want to get back to the technology or the use of materials that we currently have today. But I think you bring up a good point. I mean, probably you're right. It would take, in 200, 300 years, why wouldn't we be back at the same point we were before?
Right.
Well, in terms of making a mess, because when you're talking about all of that stuff, the first thing I think about is man, the legal implications are screwy.
Yeah.
Everybody is messed up. There is no way for the next 100 or so years anybody's going to get anything done. Half the world, how many of those people actually had their stuff together, and how many people are going through probate right now? It's a mess. Everything is all over the place.
Did the people who disappeared, are they considered deceased? And what happens if they're considered? What happens to their assets? What happens to their liabilities?
Is over.
Yeah.
Ownership is over. It becomes what you can defend is what is yours.
There's finally a housing surplus in New York too, so that might be kind of nice.
Yeah. No, I mean, we did see that in the movie where they were talking about, there were a lot less. I mean, again, and these are only in the rich, wealthy countries, right? In poor countries, you might lose 50% one day, but it might be another 50% that your country loses because, if half your farmers are gone, that might have some catastrophic, effect on your whole food system in the country, which might lead others to starvation and these types of things. But I guess, just one other thing, just checking in about the current reality of kind of a climate crisis. So I was also just looking up, it's interesting too, how much they're saying climate might have to do with some of the big wars we've had, like Syria, like Libya, saying that, right before the Syrian war, they had one of the worst droughts they've ever had. It increased their rural to city population by 50%. Led to some food riots, which then kind of helped bring about the revolution, which created the civil war in Syria. in something similarly in Libya. And then I was looking up too that, it's kind of mass immigration of people from Central America into the United States. They're also linking to changes in the climate, in the environment, making, poor farmers who are already living pretty much at poverty, not being able to function at all. So actually having to try to migrate, try to go someplace else. So I just think, I don't want to get completely lost in the Thanos kind of fantasy. I think like the reality is, is that we are living through some of these, crazy challenges that require radical action. Though I can understand, the idea that the snap is not only massively violent, but it's only a short-term solution, I think is a really good point to be brought up.
Yeah, well, and I think too, if we bring it back to kind of the real world and thinking about places that tried to do population control, I think about China's one-child policy, right? They enacted back in the 70s, I think, where basically, or the 50s, 60s. Yeah, no, I think they started seeing the effects of it in the 70s and 80s. But basically, China was afraid that the population would get too big for them to be able to sustain the resources. They actually just lifted the one-child policy in 2015 and said that they would allow couples to have up to 2 children starting in 2015 because there is a declining workforce. A lot of the people who are in the workforce are age 50 or over, and the population is declining right now, so their productivity is declining right now. And so we see someone like China who tried to control this, and even now that they're allowed to have 2 children, their economy is set up in such a way that it is already so expensive and so time-consuming to have 1 child that the idea of couples having 2 children is cost prohibitive and like exhausting. So China has set itself up over the last couple generations for the population to essentially decline. And again, this is the beginning effects of that. And China is the most populous country in the world. But trying to control something like that, especially when there was this fear of running out of resources, also doesn't look like it makes sense in the short term in the real world.
Well, to use a very superhero-esque line, folks like to say, the tighter you close your fists, the more seeps through your fingers.
Oh, like the soap thing.
Yes, like
the soap thing. Yeah. but you said China tried to. I mean, and again, this kind of gets back to Thanos in some ways. I mean, wasn't China kind of successful? I mean, didn't China get done what they were trying to get done, that in a time when they were almost not even an industrial country? I mean, I guess they weren't really an industrial country in the 60s and had this massive population that wasn't, increasing their population growth. And again, I'm not arguing that, it was right to ban, but I'm just saying the effect, didn't they get done what they wanted to get done?
Well, they got done what they attempted to do.
Well, they got done what they wanted to get done in the short term, but only 60 years later are they already seeing the negative effects of that. These kinds of solutions, I feel like the one-child policy, like snapping half the population away, is not nuanced enough to address the issues that are actually happening, right? We just said that overpopulation is not why we're experiencing climate change. It's overconsumption. So we're trying to address things that we think correlate when they don't actually correlate.
Well, and it ends up being who has the power and who gets paid in it. I remember when I was a senior in high school, some kids for their senior paper wrote that we needed World War III to stem population control. Ugh. And one of the things that was inherent in that is who was going to get paid to start that war and win that war, and who was going to be controlling the world after that. Rather than, well, we want this overall effect of, there being less people, so we're not competing for things, and all of that leads to consolidation of resources.
Right.
Well, so it's because I guess I disagree a bit about. I mean, I think China's policy, generally was pretty effective, and it's not that they failed and are changing 60 years later. It's been successful, and so now, because before, right, I assume there was no limit on how many kids you can have, right? Then they put a draconian limit of 1, and now, and you can argue any limitation is draconian, which I understand. Okay, that's fair. But and now they've increased it to 2, but it's not like they're like, oh, we failed, so let's. I don't think they failed. Like they just said, oh, now we were successful enough, we can have a little bit more space. You can have 2. You're less likely to have 2 anyway because the society restructured, and actually it'll be good for our economy if some of the population does have 2. So again, I'm not arguing, this is a positive measure and we should have this in the States or any other country. but I'm just noting that I'm not sure. Just because we like something doesn't mean that it didn't work. And like, I think it probably was a fairly successful policies, works pretty well for China. And that's why they're really continuing on with it. Just saying you can have 2 now instead of 1.
Well, I want to define works in this kind of situation, because what they did, they accomplished what they set out to do, which was to slow the growth of population. But is that actually aiding their economy in the way that they actually want?
And because it seems like in the long term, from the things that I'm seeing, is that their workforce is literally dying off. And people are feeling the pinch of trying to add another child into their household, whereas a lot of people are deciding not to do that. So we see that the one-child policy is leading to this population decline, and even though they've loosened it a little bit, the economy and the society has been set up so that a lot of people don't want more than one kid at this point.
And like you were saying about the workforce dying off and them not being able to sustain that stuff, it's sort of like a slower version of the effects of the snap.
Yeah.
Where it's like we're getting rid of all of this stuff, but our infrastructure exists for a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And exists for growing stuff, and that's the idea of it.
But China's infrastructure didn't exist. Now it is existing, and like now it has been created. In China, you can talk about the difficult economic challenges that many people have in China. And China is not a rich country; it is a poor country, but it's a lot richer than it was 50, 60 years ago. It has a much stronger infrastructure than it did 50, 60 years ago. So it's like it's making all of this plausible. But I get you're both against the kind of radical action they took. But let me ask, there was Thanos Snap, but then there was the reversing of the snap.
Yeah.
Right? And so let me ask, that radical action, like after 5 years of half the population gone, and I saw someone refer to this as kind of a selfish Avengers putting their personal grieving ahead of the kind of best for the planet. By then, was it good for the planet to all of a sudden bring back 3.5 billion people who have been disappeared for 5 years, and now you have pretty much a world that is only designed for, or at least the infrastructure, only designed for 3.5 billion people. I can only imagine the amount of wars, starvation,
chaos,
disease that would occur if you brought half the world's population just back out of nowhere.
Isn't that the whole time travel paradox? The whole going back in time and killing Hitler and all that kind of stuff of like, no matter what you try to do to undo what's been done, you're only going to make things worse. We only live off monkey's paws.
Yeah. No, it's true.
I don't know about the monkey's paws piece, but...
the monkey's paw, when you try to change, you made a wish to change stuff and it made stuff worse.
And it makes stuff worse. All wishes make things worse. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, all wishes make stuff worse.
But
there we go.
I agree with you. I think it was also reversing it that quickly after 5 years was a very selfish, I want the people that I love back. A lot of the movie was fan service, right? A lot of the movie was, we didn't actually want all these people to die that are in this little world that we've gotten used to. When really the implications of reversing the snap, again, we talk about the legal stuff, right? Did someone undie? What does that mean? Where are we going to put all those people? We've already eliminated the housing situation. How much have things changed in 5 years that bringing all those people back will really set us back again, potentially.
Well, because there aren't jobs or roles for them, but then they do have needs. So it's the big mess of now this other becomes this secondary class. And I can see them being treated the way that immigrants are treated now, but even worse.
Right.
Because it's like they're undead. And it's like, you want all this stuff back, but I went and remarried and got a new life. And actually being away from you was great for me. And I got a promotion and now I'm the head of this. And remember, I was under you, but now I'm the man. And so why would I give you your old role back when I've been great for 5 years?
Right. Well, and what about all the people whose abusers disappeared, for instance? What about people who were in bad marriages? What about people who were in bad relationships, right? And
too, there would be, these people are like, wait a minute, I used to lead companies. I used to be head of the government, and now I'm nobody?
Right. Now you don't exist?
They would create wars, what have you. So it's interesting. I think maybe it's interesting that what is, going back to our victim or villain thing a little bit, what is considered heroic might have actually been the only thing that could have made a bad situation worse. Because again, America's one thing, we still have our basic housing, infrastructure, people would be poor, but in other countries, this would mean mass starvation. This could mean mass war. And how many people are going to die from that? And how long will that take? all of that is, it's interesting that could be, I guess maybe that could be the next 10 years of movies. It's trying to work out these 3.5 billion.
I don't have the source for this, but there was a stat that said that neighborhoods that are poorer, below the poverty line, are usually more interested in your Superman type characters, the ones with a lot of powers who can fly and do a lot of stuff. And when they attain more of a middle class status, they become more interested in a Batman type character. And what I get away from that as a writer and creator of stories is that these two very human needs that we have that are put into these stories as the morals. And it's our need to endure and our need to move on. And that's one of the really important things with all of this stuff, with the overpopulation, with the ways that we are messing with the climate, and with the things and the effects that we get from racial economic inequality and overall income inequality is our need and our ability to endure. And when you think about things like the snap and bringing folks back and all of those lessons, it's why all the time travel movies are always about you lose more every time you try to fix it. What was that? See You yesterday, where we were just watching that great flick where it was about the young black lady who was like trying to fix things with time travel. And it's always about how whenever you try to go back and redo things better or more perfectly, you can't. It will only be worse. So we have to move on.
Right. Well, and I think that's why the movie rang a little false and very fan servicey. We lost Iron Man, which was tragic, but really it was painted as this victory, right? When they're not, I'm sure they're not going to address the economic implications of this.
Well, in the story, right? Iron Man is the stand-in for moving on, and that's why it works within that framework, is we get to lose this one character who stands in for all of the others, but we did bring back the rest of the world because we still want to play in that world.
Yeah.
I think that if this wasn't a comic book thing, because one thing about comic books is they, like I said before,
love bringing people back to life.
Reverting to the status quo.
Yes.
We always come back.
Yeah.
I bet you, I wouldn't be surprised if in 5 years Captain America gets de-aged and we see Chris Evans back in that role, because that's what they do in the comic books. But were this a standalone story, I think that the better ending would be that one where the people don't get snapped back.
Right. Well, and the time travel doesn't work.
We just have to learn to move on with what we have.
Yeah.
That's right. And that's a radical message that really isn't accepted by the establishment, so it's not accepted in movies, right? Like the idea there could be a bad situation, you just have to deal with it. Like, go back to Saddam Hussein running Iraq, right? Mm-hmm. That's a tough, bad situation. He was a brutal, violent person, but overthrowing him has not made Iraq a better place for most people. But we all want the picture of, we killed the bad guy, we won, no matter how many people are suffering afterwards. Same thing can be said with Libya. Same thing can be said with other places. And so here, I think, we are getting to this idea that we like to condemn radical changes to the status quo, but we like to applaud radical changes by the status quo imposed on others. Mm-hmm. And we claim it a victory no matter the ramifications of it, whether people are living better or not.
Yes, I love it. So what's the least you can do and what's the most you can do after all this?
Yeah,
you can go watch Endgame is the least you can do.
That's the very least. That's
really the least. You've already done that.
You've already done that. Check it off the list.
Well, I guess for me is, this, and I went on a retreat that was looking at actually kind of climate change and economic inequality or what have you. And it really has helped me recognize much more the depth and ramifications of climate change, of this idea that we're really dealing with radical change, that radical change can occur really slowly, and it can also happen all around us and us not even notice it. So I'm just, one thing I think is the least we can do is we can pay a little bit more attention. There's a great organization called Post-Carbon Institute. They have a great website. They even have a website called resilience.org. So you don't have to just be depressed about the problems around climate change, but also, what things can you do in your community to help better deal with these issues and to kind of help push society in a more positive way to deal with these issues. So I think the least you can do is learn a little bit more about these issues of climate change. I think the most you can do is actually make changes in your own life in kind of having a more environmentally sustainable life and pushing for, I would argue, radical policies, because I think the country, just like the racial wealth divide, we're on the very wrong direction. And if we keep going the direction, we're going to have ongoing racial economic inequality, and we're going to have a world where there's going to be less and less space for people to live, for people to grow food, and it's going to not have an equal effect. Like Thanos is like the ideal where it's random. It's not going to be random. It's going to be poor. It's going to be people of color who are going to be wiped out by climate change if things aren't done to reverse it.
This has been the Preach to the Choir podcast, part of the Race and Wealth Network. Please hate us, rate us, debate us, find us on all the places where you can say anything about us in your podcast apps, on your iTunes, and everything like that. And we'll check you next time. Peace. So I asked this elder what he was feeling about the struggle and all the years he put in, how the change is what's going on, and if we would do anything different. And his brother turned to me. He said,
Magneto was right. Bobby Heenan was right. Magneto was right. It was never about a gene or an X. The factors in the way that we were bred. You wanted us to labor at length. Our evolution prioritized strength. We absorb the sunlight too, like Superman, but we don't look none like you. Our boys are grown-ass beasts. That's what you tell your friends on your feed. It's like you're gonna fear us forever. According to the professor, we're supposed to be your protectors. Non-violent approach. We die, then you quote what our life isn't worth. It's an extinction agenda. Apartheid, Genosha don't get no better. Censor those to solve the problem. It's like peace was never an option. Magneto was right. Bobby Heenan was right. Oh my stars and garters. Magneto was right. Bobby Heenan was right. Bobby Heenan was right. It's like pain was his art and his easel. He was the brain, but we called him the weasel. Few of us respected the brilliance and how he would protect us from villains. Train, say your prayers, eat your vitamins. The rain is gonna catch him in a lie again. Apologize and say it's an embarrassment. I guess it's how we be a real American. One match with the donkey looked like Adam. Anachronism hit him with a standing rock bottom. The champ rose, hit the ropes on a pose. Big boot, leg drop, strike pose, grab the fire hose. Brain was the one that knew it was wrong. Had the brains to ask whose side he was on. The champ apologized, try to make things right, but when you NWO, it's for life. Magneto was right. Bobby Heenan was right. Silly humanoids. Magneto was right. Silly flat skin. Bobby Heenan was right. Magneto was right. Hate the player in the game and the system, but don't hate the folks that have to go and live within them. Never hate a song or a story or a movie. Just pay attention to who's producing. If it's the Lion King, man, I'm rolling with Scar. Why does it seem like all your enemies disabled and dark? Still trying to get that hometown pop, make me feel like a foreigner on my own block. Even still, real recognize real and knows the difference between being inspired and steel. Between Gaga and Madonna, while most people still treat you like Cassandra. Predictability is an inability. They're still surprised they're killing them poor folks in the Philippines. Didn't we ever war on drugs at a time? What's that word about history repeating and rhyme? Bobby Heenan was right.